Melissa, thanks so much for coming on the Scholarship GPS podcast. I have been looking forward to our conversation. When we first met, we were talking about literacy and reading and book clubs and the importance of that, and that's what we're going to focus on. But before we dive into some questions I have for you, just introduce yourself so people know who you are.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Dave. I am Melissa Muir. I am a homeschooling mom of four, but beyond that, I'm a licensed teacher in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. However, I've lived abroad now for about 13 years. We live in Ecuador, and I'm the head teacher and co-owner of Curio, and we offer lots of classes and printable resources for families that mostly focus on the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is literacy and things like that. So I'm really excited to talk about this. I feel like there's so many different kind of branches that go out from these topics of public speaking and reading and good lit and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see what we get into here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I noticed one of the things that you talk about on your website is critical thinking.
Mhm.
Why is that such an essential skill for our kids to develop?
My gosh, where do we start? Like, it's just like leveling up the type of thinking that we're doing. And I'm going to glance to the side. I've got Bloom's taxonomy written on the wall in front of
Oh,
me.
cool.
And for any of your listeners who maybe aren't familiar, or maybe Psych 101 was a little far back in the past for them, this is just a way of thinking about how we interact with information. So, kind of the bottom layers are going to be remember, you're just recalling information versus understanding it. Oh, yeah, I get it. Like, I can understand that. Then applying and analyzing. So, this is kind of where you're able to break it apart. You're able to apply that math formula to a real world situation and then getting into evaluating and creating. So, you're going to evaluate, is this a good way to use, this math formula or this literary tool, and then creating something with it. So the critical thinking part, not only does it make it like more valuable, I think anything that we do, be it math, be it language arts, but the idea that we can then go create with it is super fun to me. And so a lot of what we try to do, and I do this with my own kids in our homeschool, but anytime I'm teaching, I'm going to give kids choice. And I'm going to give kids the chance to kind of differentiate and apply that critical thinking to say, okay, is this the right thing that I want to do? Is this the best way to go about this? And the kind of optimal way to do this is to, again, give them that choice. So here's an
Hmm.
example. We give kind of a writing assignment, and then I say, we've got four outputs. After we write this thing, we're going to maybe create the scenery, the setting in Lego, or we're going to create a playlist out of your favorite songs that match this like epic, dragon infested magical land that you've created, stuff like that. And then they're going to be able to think critically. Okay, I love this song that is very upbeat and happy, but it just does not fit with this epic thing. So you can see
Right.
where the critical thinking comes in. We're just taking what we should do, the standards, your state standards that your child is maybe going off of in school, or if you're
Hmm.
homeschooling, that you might be using to kind of check the boxes. And then you're just going to level up, have them kind of evaluate what they're doing and then create something out of it. I think that's super important and super helpful.
So it sounds like there's a lot of showing the practical side of what they're learning. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not just information in a book that you need to memorize, but how am I going to use this as I'm growing up, right?
Exactly. And I would say that's
Yeah.
probably the worst thing that we could do is just leave it in the book. If there's
Yeah, yep.
one step, if you can go one step beyond the book, I mean, an art project out of this thing, something musical out of this thing, something engineering wise out of this thing, that's fantastic. But if you can kind of take it out and even involve other people, involve the collaborative kind of social skill aspect, that's huge as well. So, encouragement. And if your kids are in public school, I mean, this is something that you can do extra. You can, involve the teachers and say,
Yeah,
"Hi,
yeah.
give me a list of a few things that my, child is working on, or maybe take a peek at the syllabus or whatever and see what's coming up." And then have a family kind of agreement here. This is one of those things where this is like a family culture. It doesn't necessarily have to stay in the school. And I know
Yeah.
that's something that as kids are applying to colleges, as they're starting to kind of move out of this babying phase and into this independent learning phase, there's a lot that we can do to kind of foment that excitement about
Hmm.
learning outside. And so making it practical would be huge.
Well, it also sounds like part of what you're trying to do is spark curiosity. What are some strategies that you've seen around sparking kids' curiosity, or maybe you can give some examples of how you do that, as a teacher
Absolutely.
and as a homeschooler.
Yeah. I would say one of the saddest things that I've seen, and again, we don't need to talk badly about any generation in particular. I'm sure there were millennials that were like this, as well as Gen Z and now our alphas and stuff. But it makes me so sad when I get to work with a student and they are not curious about anything. The
Yeah.
most
Yep.
exciting thing is to work with a kid who just wants to know more. They want to know
Hmm.
why, they want to know how. I was working with a freshman last year. Um, Homeschooler, mom was just too busy with some things. So she said, can you please just take over language arts completely? So we are doing ninth grade language arts. And
Okay.
we're getting into this. And his mom says, oh, we just don't expect much of him in language arts. And I was like, okay.
Mm,
Any reason why?
okay.
And she goes, well, he just is interested in business. He just kind of wants to create his own business and go off of that. And I was like, well, that's great. And we can use lots of language arts concepts in there. Let's think
Sure.
through it. And so we would read stories and think about the decisions that the characters made. Was this a good business decision? Was this a bad business decision? We got into his business. He had this t-shirt business that he created
Okay.
online
Hmm.
with slogans and verses and stuff on t-shirts. And he was like, yeah, and my website isn't quite converting. And I was like, well, have we talked about sales copy yet? What's that?
Hmm.
It's like, it's writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's language arts. Ding, ding, ding.
Yep.
And so
Hmm.
it's making it really exciting. So we spent the semester zhuzhing up his website, talking
Hmm.
about different business decisions and reading like good business practice, as well as kind of some accounting and getting into a little bit of financial literacy. And his mom later was like, whoa, he was actually excited to read the books you were assigning because he
Uh-huh.
knew it would affect the bottom line of his t-shirt business, which was super fun, super cool. So the fact
Yeah.
that we can
Yeah.
find what kids are curious in is really important. I think that's job number one for any teacher, whether you're working on one-on-one or in a small group, or like I used to do, I used to teach middle school Spanish in a gifted middle
Hmm.
school in Richmond, Virginia, in a trailer. And it was the most wild experience of my life, but also really fun, a really fun
Yeah.
challenge to figure out what kids were interested in and how we could kind of spark that curiosity. And again, as a group, that looked like creating a crime scene in my trailer. I had the
Okay.
advantage of the kids kind of changing environments coming out of the school building, coming to my trailer. And so I would put caution tape around the outside, put muddy footprints going up to the trailer, and they start asking, who? ¿Quién? ¿Qué pasó? What happened? ¿Dónde está? Where is it? And so they're trying to figure out this mystery, but they're using all the target language that I want them to use. It's just out
Right.
of curiosity. So this can happen in so many different um, settings, I guess. But it's a really fun thing to figure out.
Well, in your story about the student who in the beginning was only interested in business in a very narrow way, you mentioned that through the process he was excited to read the books that you were recommending. How do books and literature and reading kind of fit into this bit broader story of sparking curiosity and helping students build their critical thinking skills?
Yeah, I think looking at the different kind of tentacles that go out from a book, and obviously this has a lot to do with genre. So you're
Sure.
thinking about the genre that you're picking. For example, in our homeschool, my middle schooler, she's now in eighth grade, and she's not interested in history. And so I have, yes, we've done some history, we've done some history curriculums, but the best way to teach history to this particular child is through books. She will
Hmm.
sit on the couch and read all day if I let her. And so giving her a few different historical fiction books based on a certain time period. I mean, we've hit everything from Anderson shelters and rationing and economics to different languages and spy skills and stuff like that. And that's all through the story. Hey, why was she suspicious of this? Why did they take down the street signs? Why couldn't they use sugar in her birthday cake? And she
Hmm.
knows that because she's paying attention to the story.
Right.
Otherwise, if I had given her like a list of facts to memorize,
Yeah.
see you later.
Yep.
That was not going to happen. And so history can be done like that. I mean, looking at scientific topics, sci-fi is super fun. We're in the middle of this book study. This group of bookworms. I mean, that's the best way to describe them. These are kids just love to read. And we're reading the sci-fi book and we are talking about this description of this alien in the story who has
Mm-hmm.
translucent skin. And they're like, whoa, could you see like their intestines and what's inside their intestines. And everybody was getting like super grossed out. And we were
Uh-huh.
like, wait, what's the intestine again? And
Hmm.
again, if that were the purpose of the class, we could have taken it a little further.
Sure.
But it was a good learning moment. So a pretty fun connection to make.
Yeah, that is awesome. As you were talking about your daughter not loving history, but loving books, I was the exact opposite. I loved history, and I think it's where my son probably picked up that his passion for history.
Mhm.
But my junior year of high school, my history teacher and my English teacher like combined curriculums. So as we're going through like the Civil War in history class, we're reading The Red Badge of Courage in English,
Perfect.
and there was all that interaction, and it really made both subjects much more meaningful to me. And that was kind of where I started my love of reading. I was not
Yeah.
much of a reader before that, and I saw, oh, these stories can be really interesting. And even today I still probably read more nonfiction than fiction, but
Yeah.
just I think that synthesis of information and subjects, and I still see this with the students I work with. They're very siloed in kind of their thinking of academics. And it's like, I
Mm.
love math and I hate reading, or I love science and I hate history, or whatever. And really, I think getting that spark of seeing all of these things are connected in some way, and it's all knowledge and wisdom that you
Yeah.
can gain and be
Yeah.
imparted to you. It just takes a little bit, it takes that love of learning and curiosity, right?
Yeah, I have this dream, Dave, to create a history curriculum. I'm also a history nerd. Um, this history curriculum that is taught not necessarily by dates or geography, but by inventions and
Oh,
architecture.
yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Thinking about the wheel in ancient civilizations in South America versus ancient civilizations in Asia,
Hmm.
and what that looked like in different places and how it was used differently. Thinking about architectural kind of innovations, a dome, an arch, that sort of thing is just so cool to think about as you kind of
Yeah.
branch out. And sure, plot it on a timeline, but the more important thing is the connection. How does it matter? Because again, the dates don't necessarily make or break your life later on. It's the curiosity and the connection that matter.
Yeah, yeah. And the dates are things that you can memorize if you need to. Like, that's kind of trivial. It's really more
Yeah,
important that you understand the why, the what and the why than the when. Like,
right,
you need a general knowledge that the Roman Empire was 2,000 years before the founding of America, but you don't need to
right,
know the exact dates, right? I mean,
right,
yeah,
exactly.
yep,
Yeah,
yep. So, I mean, we've kind of talked about how this is important academically, but do you want to talk about maybe how this builds skills for, quote, the real world? If there is
sure.
even a
Yeah,
difference between academics and the real world.
yeah. And I wish there were more blurred lines, Dave. I wish
Yeah,
the
yeah.
lines were blurred a little bit more, but unfortunately, it does take a little bit of a step over this bridge of like academia versus real life. I think one of the coolest things that we can do is open up dialogue while we're learning. So giving the kids the chance to express their opinions
Hmm.
and giving them the scaffolding to do that if they're not already chomping at the bit to do it.
Okay.
I mentioned that book club we were in that I run, and we've got all the personalities, right? We've got the kid who will not stop talking. We've got the kid who is an English language learner. We've got the kid who's really only there because mom pushed him into the class. And we've got the kid who's kind of like, yeah, I read the book. I know what's going on, but I'm not
Hmm.
you know, spilling my guts about what I think
Uh-huh.
about it. And
Right.
so each of these kids needs something different, and giving them the scaffolding. Maybe I put up some sentence stems at the beginning. I think that, or I connected to this, or I was confused by this. Giving them just those first few words is really all they need. They've already got
Hmm.
the rest of the sentence completed in their mind. So that's kind of the small chunks. Then we get into these bigger ones with public speaking and getting a message out there. And I would say, what's the message though? Let's back up. This is going back to where that critical thinking idea comes into play. If they haven't spent any time thinking critically about what they learned, they probably don't have much of a message to share.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Right.
going forward, figuring out a way to, have something to share that they're excited about. And again, I like to think of this as like offering choice in terms of what they're learning. Sure, we do need to learn about, I don't know, let's go with the Roman Empire. We do need to learn about the Roman Empire, but I think you're really interested in what happened in the Colosseum, blood, gore, drama, whatever.
Right.
That's really interesting to you, and you want to
Right.
dive deep into that. Great. You're also going to get to touch on who was sitting where, why the people on the floor were on the floor and not in the
Hmm.
stands. You're
Hmm.
probably going to think about why they needed this sort of entertainment in the first place, things like that. And you're going to get all of that just by honing in on this one aspect. I'm giving you the choice, and therefore you're going to run with it. Now you've got a message, and I'm going to give you another choice on like the method of sharing what you learned. Could
Hmm.
we write an essay? We could. Sometimes we must, but
Hmm.
other times it's not necessary. So maybe you love editing in some video editor and you want to shoot some footage and reenact
Hmm.
it. Fantastic, do it. And you're also developing those real world skills.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yep.
you want to have a conversation with somebody and have them interview you about it. That's great. Involve somebody from the community to do that.
Hmm.
And then maybe you're teaching somebody else. Maybe you've got some younger siblings or some neighbors who might be interested, and make it PG. That might be
Hmm.
important too. So there's so many different outlets on how we can kind of take this out into the real world. And I'm excited for people to feel a little bit more at ease with that and
Hmm.
not just kind of feel like the 5 paragraph essay is the end all be all and we must do that so we can get into college and then yeah, whatever happens after that happens. There's so much more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just about checking boxes, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Yep. Yeah.
So important.
Well, so okay, we've talked about academics and we've talked about sparking curiosity. We talked about potentially how this works with building real world skills, but have you seen or how does this play out maybe in more of a long-term impact for the student?
Yeah. I think it sets them up to be more, have those blurred lines of what's academic and what's not. I guess I can speak from, I would be interested to hear what you think and what you've seen on this. I'll share my part of my experience because I was the box checker. I was the straight A student who got into a fantastic college and did really well on my SATs. And then I was like, I don't really care about any of that. And actually, I didn't really feel like I learned much because I was
Hmm.
just getting the A on the test.
Hmm.
And so later on, when I was curious about things and I realized, oh, I don't have to spend all this energy on getting into the school and getting into, X, Y, and Z programs, I was really excited to learn. I wanted to kind of rewind that for my own kids. That's basically one of the foundations of why we chose to homeschool
Hmm.
was I want this to be like the expectation from the beginning. I'm not going to force you, and we may just skip certain sections of the book, of the language arts book, of the history book, whatever. But it's because we're looking for that interest. We're looking for the
Hmm.
engagement. We're looking for the connection. It's not just doing it to do it. And so that's kind of my experience with it. Have you seen any other examples of this? I kind of
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the my colleagues, Lisa from Flourish Coaching, she always talks about reverse engineering, and she comes at it from a perspective of college major planning and future career planning. And I think that's a little bit of what you're talking about here is
yeah,
looking at the end goal in mind. And it doesn't have to be as specific as I'm going to be a mechanical engineer. It doesn't have to be, a job necessarily, but like
yeah,
what kind of person do you hope your child's going to turn out to be? You want them to be somebody who's curious and has the ability to think critically and make decisions on their own and synthesize information. I mean, all of
yeah.
these things are critical for being successful in life, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And somebody, I always wish I would go back and find out who actually said this to me, but someone told me very early on, your child's future spouse is not going to marry them because they were a straight A student, because they got into X school, because they were a state champion. It's because they are kind and curious and
Hmm.
considerate and all these other kind of intangibles that I think lead to the other successes that
Yeah.
maybe we would love to see,
Yep.
but it's just secondary. So agreed,
Yeah.
agreed. Super
Yeah.
helpful.
Well, one thing I definitely want to make sure we hit on is you offer book clubs. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. I'm going to be doing a book club for my juniors to prepare for a pretty big full ride scholarship that's only open to juniors. But I'll talk about that elsewhere. But that was really how we connected. Was
Yeah.
I found that you offer book clubs and wanted to find out kind of what you offer, how that works. So tell us about that, and also maybe just tell us what else you do, how else you work with families and students.
Sure. Well, thank you. So Curio serves pretty much from like first grade on up. We have adult students, we have very young students, and we've got teachers who serve all those populations. So it's not just me; it's a bunch of other very qualified individuals who we love working with. The book club is right now just for middle schoolers, but later on we've got kind of an upper level, and those classics, those AP Lit kind of books. That book list will be included, and again, these are the skills that we're talking about, preparing those kind of, what's my message, what do I actually want to share, how do I get those kind of stepping stones in place to share, plus written work each week, comprehension, vocabulary, essays, things like that. And then we've got public speaking. So again, starting early, if any of your listeners have younger kids, this is building those skills early. So a public speaking class where they are sharing something they're excited about. Again, we're not giving them some random abstract topic. It's
Yeah.
very concrete, very interest based. So those are all over on thinkcurio.com, and we're constantly adding more times and sections to serve different populations. So it's a very fun, exciting time to be serving all these different families, whether they homeschool or whether they're coming to us after their traditional school day.
Cool. Well, it sounds like the best place for people to go would be thinkcurio.com then. Yep.
Correct. Yep.
Awesome.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good. Well, Melissa, thanks so much for taking time to chat with us. This has been really informative, fun. I can tell that you are very passionate about this, and if I had a kid who is not a grown up now, I'd probably be signing up to work with you because I know that they would get a lot out of it. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, we're excited, and we love seeing all the progress that comes out of our classes. So
yeah,
very fun, and I'm excited for your audience. So thank you.
yeah. Thanks so much.